Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
Pod Smash.
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer.
We're your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are going to be talking about what is widely considered, infamously considered, the worst video game of all time. So, we just got done doing a series on the huge list of games that are considered the best. So we're going to go ahead and hit the polar opposite here, talk about the worst game of all time, which may or may not actually be the worst game of all time, but we'll talk more about that later. But so that we don't spoil it's there in the title. It's the E.T. game for Atari. So we're going to be talking about some of the kind of the history
Everything
of
about
that.
That's
And
the
everything
story.
about that. Yeah, exactly. We'll talk
Why
about the
didn't
story,
you
but we'll
say 80-bit Pod Smash in the theme of E.T.? Like, you always sing that when I say welcome to another episode of, and then you know
what happened?
do the thing.
You know what happened? I realized after I had to edit several episodes myself that whenever I would be singing songs, it would be over, like the song, the music, our intro music is playing over me singing because it's like right there at the beginning as it's fading out. So
I
I've
could
been doing
change
that. I've been doing that for.
I'm just an
it's
idiot.
Fine. No, it's fine. I'm an idiot for never having edited the episodes and.
I know
now,
sometimes I will like cut the music short to get your song in there, like when it's a very themed, heavy thing. I have done that in the past, so maybe our audience can set that straight.
I could not pull the ET music out of my butt right now.
That's it. That's the one. That's the reason.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's additional. Yeah, it's twofold. It was a twofold reason. So. Yeah, so we'll talk about E.T., we'll talk about why it's the worst game or not, and we'll get into all that, but we are where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer, so what are you drinking tonight?
I am continuing my Oktoberfest adventures. Now have landed, finally I can bring one home. I landed at Star Hill, obviously, because it's walking distance from my house, so I picked up a can of Festi, which is their Oktoberfest lager, and there's nothing fancy on their can to read. But they had it on tap forever ago, and I was drinking it there, but you couldn't buy it. They didn't distribute it. And so I finally saw some in their little cooler and picked up a 6-pack. This one's a really light-bodied one. So apparently there's two flavors of like Oktoberfest. There's Marzen, which is a style, and there's like Fest beer or Feast beer, which is a different style. I might have these mixed up, but I'm going to go with it. Marzen is the more bold, darker-ish of the two. They're within that spectrum of Oktoberfest style beers, but Marzen is like bolder, on the closer to the spectrum of like stout porter, and so it's going to have a darker color and it's going to have a thicker body and a more sweet, bold taste. Whereas the Fest beer, which is called Festi, so I assume that's what it is, didn't say it on the can, is more of the light-bodied, lower ABV. It's only 4.8%. So this one is like a very light body. It feels like I'm drinking almost like a Budweiser. It's that light. Obviously, it tastes totally different, but as far as mouthfeel is, it's like a Budweiser, and it has it does have like the sweetness you would expect from an Oktoberfest, and a little bit of the hops on the end, a little bitterness there, but barely noticeably bitter, and just a little bit of sweetness, just enough to know what it is. So that's your Oktoberfest lager. You talked about how like you like lagers like Yingling. I feel like this is the Oktoberfest version of that. Although they do have an Oktoberfest Yingling, and I've not had that, so I have no clue. But I imagine that's what this would taste like.
Yeah, sounds good. I am drinking. Actually, it's not a beer at all. It is spiked lemonade.
Ooh,
but it's watermelon flavored. It's from Simply, the lemonade making. I'm sure there's some subsidiary of like Coca-Cola or something.
Huh.
Get out of here now.
There's alcohol in it?
Yeah, it's spiked. So it's really, really sweet. And my wife said, like, I got it thinking that like it may be my wife because she's just kind of coming out of like finally she's no longer pumping to feed our child. So it's sort of like she's a bit more free to partake of alcohol again. So I kind of got this thinking that she might want to try it. Then she reminded me that she went on keto like within the last couple weeks. B, she doesn't like artificial watermelon flavor, and that's just those two. There's no third one. So I was like, whatever. I'll give it a shot then. Sort of again, farewell to summer kind of drink, but it's really, really artificial flavored. So even though it says like natural watermelon flavor, it's very, very sugary and artificial with 17 grams of added sugar. So it's not keto friendly. But it's good. It's good for someone with a sweet tooth like me. But I don't think of this as like, I don't think this is like drinking a beer. I think of this as just like drinking juice.
Adult juice.
Yep, I'm having my juice tonight, guys. I need my juice. So
Your daddy juice.
it's kind of like my daddy juice. Yes. Just say it confidently. Be like, I'm gonna go to a bar and be like, I would like some daddy juice, please.
There is actually a beer called Daddy Juice, and
Could I
forget what
have your
brewery it's on.
finest daddy juice?
Yeah. Is it Aslan?
I
Yeah, it's an Aslan beer. Yeah. That's funny.
I have a D&D character that would absolutely walk into a tavern and order daddy juice just to troll people. So, that's fun. Chaotic, great. All right, that's all about beer then that we're drinking. So before we get into our segments, is there anything you wanted to chat about today?
Did you ever catch up on that very awesomely short PlayStation State of Play? 20 minutes.
I caught up on the highlights, yeah.
So the game Rise of the Ronin, I believe is what it's called.
You mean
see
Budget Ghosts of Tsushima?
Is it Budget Ghost of... It's Team Ninja? Looked amazing.
Yeah, compared to Sucker Punch, I would say they're Budget Ghosts of Tsushima.
No,
Yeah, but it's coming out like 2 years from now, so
yeah, 2024.
It'll look way better because it's gonna be exactly
like straight up PS5 exclusive.
It will be exactly.
Yeah.
It won't be hampered by older hardware. No, the game that caught my eye was Stellar Blade. They renamed it. Was Project Eve before?
Yeah,
and it caught my eye before, but like it looked whatever they showed off looked way more Souls-like, but with that like really, really like cinematic twist with a lot of like cool killing blow kind of looking attacks that she was able to do. So that was fun. That looked really, really fun. So that would have been my number two pick as far as best in show since
what was number one?
Obviously God of War. I mean, it was great.
Right.
It looked fantastic.
Yeah. It wasn't anything new. So I guess there was a little bit more
It absolutely
of the plot.
was. They confirmed they confirmed Odin, like it was Odin's voice actor who was talking through most of it. And the voice actor is the dude from The West Wing, the guy who played Toby on The West Wing. So
I never watched that show. I don't know who
I didn't watch it either, but I know that actor. He's also in Handmaid's Tale, and
okay.
Yeah, he was the morally gray guy who you think is good, but then in like the last season he was bad. But
gotcha.
Either way, he's that guy. That
way to spoil that for anybody who's
fantastic. The actor is fantastic. I mean, he's like I said, morally gray. He's not that bad. He's just not like on the side you thought he was. Doesn't matter. He's Odin in God of War now, so he's gonna be
nice.
Like, I just think of like how are you gonna not compete, but like how are you going to cast that opposite of Christopher Judge, who is just godly as Kratos. And I think they picked someone solid to play Odin.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw God of War stuff, I kind of tuned out. I took my headphones off and like started clicking around on other reactions to other stuff while it was going on.
Sure.
Because I don't want to see anymore. I'm in. Like, I'm getting it day one.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot wait. The hype is there. I don't need to see more. And the more surprised I'll be, the more pleasant I think the game will be. So the first God of War, I had a major spoiler by looking up a walkthrough of an area, and there was a specific weapon on the back of him. And I was like, that's in this game? And I was so bummed that I didn't get to experience that. It was spoiled. So.
Maybe it's a downside of your obsession with trophy hunting. Maybe you should just experience the games you play.
But that's such a waste of time. You got to play it twice. I ain't got time for that.
It's not a waste of time if you had a good time.
That's true.
Look, if you want to avoid spoilers, you just can't trophy hunt anymore. That's it.
Nope.
There you go.
Yeah, I have to make that trade-off.
Or you're okay with spoilers and it doesn't ruin a
that's what I'm saying. I have to. Yeah,
exactly.
I have to do both. Either way, I don't want to extend a 40-hour platinum to 80 because I have to play through it twice. That's
there you go. Then the price you pay is a few spoilers here and there.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. No, it looks good. I'm excited. Of course, all the PlayStation apologists is probably the best term I can give them, are like, it beats up every other game this year, and I'm like, not yet. Like, you can't say that. I mean, yes, it looks good, but you haven't played it yet. Like,
haven't played it yet.
How do you know they didn't just cherry pick the best bits? And or worse, do something controversial with a character you love, and then you're gonna hate them forever, right? Like you don't even know that you play. We see ourselves playing as Kratos, but you don't know that Kratos is like they could they could still maintain the single camera shot, and they could just move it behind Atreus at some point, like halfway through the game.
Oh, they could.
And boom, literally pass the torch.
Yep.
And then people, I mean, or they could do it in the first 20 minutes of the game, like they did in The Last of Us Part 2. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. But that one game of the year, so I think we'll be okay.
Right, exactly. So, well, I'm just saying that people who are like unanimously praising it as the greatest thing ever,
yeah,
which it has a good chance of being pretty like dang great.
Yeah,
I'm not denying that. I'm just simply saying that, like, yeah, gay. They're the same people that will cry foul as soon as a controversial and bold decision that actually makes it worthy of being, game of the year is made.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So,
case in point, Last of Us Part 2.
Fickle gaming community.
Is that the last?
Love to hate you guys, hate to love you guys, but
that may. Well, there's Callisto Protocol. I don't know when the cutoff date is for Game of the Year contenders that are over the horizon.
It's like I think it's like halfway through November or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was.
Callisto Protocol is not coming until December 2nd. So it might miss the deadline for this year.
It will, because Smash Bros was a December. Any December release, I know for sure. Yeah, because Smash Bros was a December release, and it was.
So I think, Gotham Knights might have a shot at least a nomination. Like looking at Game of the Year nominees.
At this point, all you can say is who else is going to be nominated, because it's going to basically come down to God of War or Elden Ring at this point. Like I don't. See...
We know Horizon's going to get nominated.
Exactly.
Right?
There hasn't been enough that came out this year, right? There hasn't been enough. But real quick, I want to take some time to change gears real hard to talk about. Did you see the leaks of Grand Theft Auto 6 that have been confirmed that Rockstar confirmed were legit?
This is awful. I have so much to say about this. Oh, I feel so bad for Rockstar. I feel so bad for the creatives, the developers.
I don't. No, I do not, because this game has been far too long coming, and they have specifically delayed it just to leech whales in Grand Theft Auto. No. You can't tell me these people who have been responsible for a travesty like Grand Theft Auto Online deserve any of my sympathy.
Well, I mean, you're a creative person. How would you feel if, like, you were working on your novel and, like, you were really shaping it up to be something, and then I come into your room and steal it and publish it on the internet? It's not ready yet. It's not done. It's not even edited.
Sure,
and then people lambast you, and they say, Dan's a horrible author. This is trash. This book is terrible. I don't want anything to do with it. That's what happened on the mass scale to all of the developers. And
are people saying it's awful? Because I've seen nothing but excitement about it.
No, it's bad. It's real bad up there. Yeah, it's janky. It's glitchy. Of course it is. It's not finished yet. It's not anywhere near. You take like a specific test program that could have been displayed to test one aspect of like the physics engine that's not even in the context of the game. I don't know if that's what we saw. Anyway, I digress. I'm bummed for the creative people, with the people whose boots are on the ground as far as the development team. Do I care about Rockstar taking a hit or 2K Games taking a hit? No, because they're, like you said, they're the publisher level. They're the money bags, right? They're up top making all the commands.
Fine once they actually reveal. I mean, the same thing. The same thing happened with Elden Ring, except people were like stoked about the glitchy, pixelated footage that they saw, right? Like but because they want it to be, right? Like it's all perception, man. And I think
they will be fun. That is true.
I think that at this point, the confirmation that GTA 6, the proper follow up to the best selling game of all time, pretty much like single game.
Yeah. Being developed.
That's it's not just being developed. It's far enough along to have leaks, right? So I wouldn't be that. I mean, the internet's the internet, and as a creative person, I'm certain that my ego would take a hit in a circumstance like that. But at the same time, and then I would just come over and beat you up, right? Like I'm lucky enough that
well, yeah. And Rockstar's gonna go after him. You know they will. Their legal arm is gonna go nuts.
Yeah. Well, Rockstar doesn't have the luxury of being able to beat them up, right? Like
that's true. They can't punch someone in the face
with the law.
Right.
I'd just come over.
You couldn't catch me. I just run away from you.
No, I trap you though. I'm wily.
Oh, you might be able to do that. You're wily. It's like
you may be a roadrunner, but I'm wily, Coyote. wait. He always loses in those exchanges.
Yeah, you paint like a bridge opening into a building, and I'm like, I'm gonna go under this bridge,
and you do, and you just go right through it. And I'm like, wait, what? And I go right back. Penguin and Termite as Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. There's your video game idea, intrepid developers that listen to us. Yeah.
That's funny. That's great.
Cool. Well, Like now I'm picturing your body on top of like basically like a centaur, except instead of a horse's body, it's like a termite's body with the 6 legs.
I feel like that's like
With like running shoes on the bottom.
it's a mixture
You
of
got your
Ron
water bottle.
Weasley's fear of spiders and that one Harry Potter movie,
yeah,
like that with the roller skates on the spider, ridiculous, and then like Pixar's A Bug's Life with the giant caterpillar like body. Anyway, it's images for days.
Strange images, yes, strange images. Nightmare fuel, probably in the right hands
for someone.
But
yeah.
Well, termite as a centipede is not our favorite thing, but
80-bit Pod Smash is my favorite thing.
80-bit Pod Smash is my favorite thing.
Favorite thing. Did we just change our favorite thing to my favorite thing? We both just did that.
Well,
I know I did it by accident. Yeah, but you followed suit. I listened for it, and you did the same
parroted.
thing.
Yeah, it's just parroting, I guess.
Interesting.
What's your favorite thing?
So in our community, there are 19 houses here, and probably 20 plus residents, and then kids. So like 50 people or so. There is a lovely dear couple who got accepted into the Peace Corps, and they are going to leave to go to Jamaica to serve for several years. They have found someone to take care of their house and their property here. But anyway, as a going away, they decided to bring in a local cover band and have catering from the best Mexican food in Charlottesville called Al Carbone. Don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's absolutely legendary, and it's renowned and famous on like the subreddit for Charlottesville. It's a big deal. Al Carbone is awesome. And we had a straight up, right outside my door, live cover band playing music. And the community was like dancing. The kids were up. They had instruments set up for kids to join to play. They weren't like super loud or obnoxious. So kids were up there like playing music, dancing and singing, and everyone was having a blast. Food was catered. So everyone was eating, and it was like a cookout on steroids. It was amazing. And the weather was like perfect. So my wife, who has a broken foot, crutched out there, and we sat her up with a camp chair and propped her foot up. She got to enjoy the music. It was absolutely life-giving and incredible for everyone to just have a kind of a big celebration.
Nice.
I equate this to my rant. I frequently go on a rant about how much fun wedding receptions are and how we don't do that as like a culture more often. You don't need to have a wedding to do the whole wedding reception party part. Like you can have a DJ, you can get a venue, you can get your friends and family together and like party it up and just don't have the wedding. Just do that regularly for the sake of having fun with people you love and care about. Like, let's do that. So that's the closest. This event that happened, that is my favorite thing, is the closest thing to that. It was a live band, dancing, and food. It was amazing. So that's my favorite thing.
Great.
I've got pictures. It's great.
My favorite thing, man, it's just probably gonna be D&D related stuff because been hitting our stride. I got one campaign that I'm running once a month, and then one campaign that two campaigns that I'm playing in, one twice a month and one once a week. Although the once a week one just started back up again, so but it kind of came at the right time because I've been itching for more after having kind of a slight slump of that. But yeah, so that's been fun. I would say aside from D&D stuff though, because I know I talk about it a lot, it's almost been just under a year when I had my last Bloodborne Return to Yharnam event, and I remember very specifically I had blasted through it, and my intention was to go on and then play Plague's Tale for the rest of October, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it after, revisiting the masterpiece that was Bloodborne. Even though Plague's Tale is supposedly quite good itself, it just didn't feel good to play. It didn't feel fun. Well, I fired it up again now after having a year gone by and having just finished the platinum on Rime. I decided, a tearjerker like Rime, having decided to then fire up Plague's Tale, which supposedly is also a tearjerker, and it's great. It's good. I think they've had the PS5 enhancements since, so I think that might have made a slight difference in my appreciation for it, but it's very, very fun. And I only played like an hour and a half of it, but it's kind of like, if you can get past the first like introductory like chapter where it's like really just meant to be that very light, like, yay, the world is good, these people are happy and together, and then crap hits the fan halfway through that chapter, and then it's dark and brutal for the rest of the game. But I think that was one of the things. It was like, oh my gosh, this game's so light and happy. When I started after Bloodborne, and then like if I had just like powered through it a little bit longer, I might have been able to get hooked a year ago. But no, it's good. It's a good time for it. I should be able to blast it out. It's got like a 12-hour platinum, 10-hour platinum, something like that. So
yep.
So I'm gonna enjoy it. It's more stealth than I typically like in games, but that's fine. The stakes are high. Like you're with your brother, and you have to constantly have him like hide, and then like you'll like, no, you have to come follow me, come on, take my hand, go. And so it's interesting, really interesting gameplay being someone who is not like, they do a really good job of putting you in the protagonist who is not a BA war hero. Like she
good.
Literally her only weapon is a sling.
Okay.
And you do kill people with the sling, which is great, but like you're like upgrading the sling to like spin faster and stuff. But still, it's not like, oh, look at me, I'm a cool, like war hero, rah. It's like, no, I'm just a little girl with delusions of grandeur, I think. It's fun.
Nice. The sequel to that is coming out October 18th.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why I kind of had an idea to try to. I don't know if I'm going to snag it in October because it'll probably be a short game, but I got Bayonetta coming up, and so I'm kind of just like, that's probably the next game I will buy, quite frankly. But yeah.
Bloodborne. So what was your response to a little inside baseball for our audience? This is Penguin and Termite business speak. What was your response to me wanting to live stream Bloodborne every Wednesday night through October?
It would ruin the magic.
Why?
No, it wouldn't ruin the magic for you, not necessarily. I think it would. That takes something.
No, you don't live stream.
To me, is
no. You're not committed to anything.
Yeah,
we do it together, but I'm live streaming mine. I'm hoping you would co-op with me. So your most expected input to that would be your voice, maybe some Discord chatting, or
I would
Twitch
love
chatting.
To, in the spirit of From Software games, just be a silent, disembodied figure.
And watch me just suffer through the game.
I'll have to pick the most ridiculously sexy character, like just like over the top, like skimpy clothing. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I don't think they have that in Bloodborne. They have it in Dark Souls. Like they have like skimpy outfits in at least Dark Souls 2, but they don't think they have it in Bloodborne. You're gonna be fine. There's nothing that is as hard as Malenia in Bloodborne.
Ugh.
Full stop.
That would kill the magic, and then
there's a couple of tricky ones. There are a couple of tricky ones because they do things like you have to go through their like randomly generated dungeons kind of thing in order to get like, there's one trophy you have to get for the platinum, that you have to kill like a boss that's like 5 of these. They're called chalice dungeons deep, and there are a couple of the bosses in there that are just like irate. One will, it's like you learn to parry or you lose, is basically what it boils down to. But parrying is with a gun, so it's a lot easier in this game. And there's another one that you have to do that, like there's a entire dungeon you have to do with like 2 hits till you die. Like you basically, like they nerf your health, and like you get like 2 shot by like everything. But there are tricks to killing the bosses there. There are like, again, this game has been out for like 7 years now. There are an incredible vast amount of videos, resources, and strategies out there. To most, if not all, of the bosses are cheesable. Many of them are co-opable, if not all of them. And if you do the build that I tell you to do, you'll probably be fine.
Okay.
With pretty much everything. It's like the most versatile build in the game.
Sweet. So I might do that. I'm toying with the idea. Like, I know I'm going to play Bloodborne in October. It's just a matter of my live streaming it. Wednesday, my calendar is free every Wednesday in October.
Do it if you want to. If you don't want to, if it's not fun, then don't do it. Then don't.
And last year's trick for you could be this year's treat. Now we get to play.
Well, I'm half expecting you now to just straight up like, I'm going to play Bloodborne. I'm going to stream it every Wednesday, and every Wednesday you'll be streaming a different Resident Evil game.
Oh gosh, I was playing Resident Evil 7. I forgot about that. Yeah, year goes by really fast. I was toying with the idea of buying The Quarry and playing that like Until Dawn. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. But no, I think Bloodborne. I don't know if I'll platinum it in a month.
Was I thinking about doing? I mean, it is definitely platinumable in a month.
Not for me.
I mean, you're gonna have, like I said, if you don't do what Shane did, which is like, I killed the first like 5 bosses with him, and then he was like, all right, now I'm just going to take off because I got this. I understand the basic mechanics enough now to basically trounce my way through. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be the same thing as, what do you call it? Elden Ring. You'll be fine. Yeah, we don't have time for DLC, so that was our DLC-ish kind of
Okay.
thing, is talking about October
Kind of
plans.
is. Yeah, honestly, like.
So, I mean, it's like our friend, the show Ryan just told me. He said it's September, which means it's the holidays now in our house.
Yes. Yep.
That is, I kind of feel that energy, if not,
Yeah.
not quite as extreme as listening to Christmas music like he does, but I feel that energy of being like, all right, yeah, let's like countdown till Halloween, and then after that it's Thanksgiving. It's just like, and I can get my son excited, and I'm trying to get him to go outside with me more because I need to go outside more now that the weather's getting a little cooler. So
Barely.
go outside, barely cooler, but still cooler. Like in the evenings,
Still in the 80s. The evenings it does cool off. Yeah,
it does cool off, right? Like it's been tolerable for me to go out there. I'm not like I'm not coming back in just like drenched in sweat from head to toe. So I'm more inclined to actually want to go outside. But I'll like, oh man, we could do like I want to drag out my fire pit and do like ciders with the kids once like it's dark enough before bedtime to be dark enough to do not like hard ciders with the kids, hard ciders while the kids are around. So they'd be like, here, Gavin, have a bold rock.
Yeah.
Have some what is it, longbow or whatever, gold bow, I don't know what it is, strong bow. It's not a good one. It's not not a very good cider, but anyways.
Yeah, we've been using our fire pit a lot in the neighborhood. It's rocking multiple nights a week.
But like you tell me in August, and I'm like, no. Like why add more heat?
Yeah, it's awful then. But now it's good. Yep.
Good. Cool. All right. Well, sorry, DLC lovers, that we skipped this week without any.
But check out, it's a good segue into go check out twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, because that's usually where we do our live streams that we haven't really done much because our life got nuts from summer travel for work. Follow it up now by school starting and my wife breaking her toe and kind of wrecking any possibility of her help with the children for bedtime. So that should all be resolved and done in October. And maybe I will do a Wednesday evening live stream of Bloodborne. If not every Wednesday, I can probably do 2 Wednesdays in October leading up to Halloween. I think I can make that work looking at our schedule. So if you want to be a part of that, twitch.tv/80bit podsmash. Go ahead and like that or subscribe, whatever Twitch's version of that is, so that you get notified when we do go live. And we'll also talk about it more on our show as things happen. We also discuss all of our live stream plans on Discord and social media outlets. You can find all of that information over at 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website, which also has that link to Twitch I just mentioned. And every single Monday at midnight, a new podcast drops. It's an hour-long, kid-friendly or family-friendly podcast that drops on all of this audio feeds. That's Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, whatever app you would like through our RSS feed. You can drop it anywhere. And other than what I'm doing right now, it's ad-free, and it's completely free to y'all. So enjoy.
Sweet. Right. Well, tonight we are talking about the game E.T. for Atari. Way before my time. Not way before my time, but definitely before my time as a gamer. And it is, again, widely considered to be the worst video game of all time. So let us talk about that story, that tale. And was stalling because I lost my notes, and now I found them. So that's where we want to start. What is the story? What is this game, and why is it considered the worst game of all time?
It's a
and then
story.
We'll talk about whether it does or not deserve that. Mm-hmm.
And as you know from listening to this podcast, Termite loves video game history. So I will spare you the entire history of Atari, and I will just drop you in right here. 1982. Atari had been around for about 10 years. The original executive leadership of the company is in turmoil. There's turnover. There have been many offices replaced with new folks, as the video game industry at this point is booming. Atari's at the top. They are the hottest ones. The video game industry is now collectively a $2 billion revenue stream, and most of that is attributed to Atari. And so there was a buyout from Warner, like Warner Brothers Entertainment Company, and they wanted to shore up what Atari was doing. It was very engineering heavy at the time for that first 10 years, and it was wild and loose, but it was creative and fun. The environment, the work, the games, everything was much better off earlier on until Warner kind of bought them out. And articulating it this way because it's very much mirroring some of the industry consolidation stuff we're seeing today. So it's very relevant to see history maybe repeat itself. But anyway, Warner had bought Atari out. So there was a lot of CEO stuff. They were just trying to become more of like the typical American business marketing, shore all of the profit loss stuff up and optimize profits and reduce losses and such. So it was changing the culture. It was changing the times, and everything at Atari was kind of like, yes, it was in the up and up. It was making more money than it ever had before, but specifically the time frame here in 1982 in July, as we were approaching the second half of the year, all of its projected profits for that quarter were not even going to come close to being met. And that's the introduction of the great video game crash of 1983. Hasn't happened yet, but we're on the cusp of it, and it's not all attributed to E.T.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Not all of it's there. It's part of it.
Possible.
But
that would be ridiculous to think that though people like to, because it's an easier story to say that E.T. crashed.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about the whole E.T. thing. So anyway, 1982, Howard Scott Warshaw, the developer of Yar's Revenge and Raiders of the Lost Ark, which were great Atari games, was approached by Ray Kassar, the CEO of Atari at the time, to make E.T. after they had just spent ridiculous amounts of time and money negotiating the license to even do it. They had to have the game out in time for the holidays. It was July 27th when the famous conversation happened, and the game needed to be done by September 1st. So if you do some quick math, that's 5 weeks. This is Howard Warshaw. There's tons of information out. There's a show on Netflix, and I can't remember the name of it. What was it called? It is right at the bottom of this article because I watched it today in preparation for this show. High Score is a documentary on Netflix. It's like 5 episodes long about the history of the gaming industry. He's interviewed here, and this whole account is laid out in episode 1 of that documentary. So you can go check that out if you want to see the actual interviews. So 5-week turnaround. He had 2 days, maybe 3 days, to come up with a design to present to Steven Spielberg. So when he got the phone call on the 27th, it was, you're going to go to the airport in 2 or 3 days and get on a private jet to go meet Spielberg, and you need to have an entire game design ready to present to him and pitch him. He needs to buy in on it. So 3 days. Yeah.
Steven Spielberg, as brilliant as he is, and especially as brilliant as he was at the peak of his career, is a man that should have absolutely no say in a video game being made. Period. Full stop. Love the man, love the man's work. But just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're going to be good at another thing. And this is just a classic example of, why are you flying to present this game? I mean, granted, getting to meet Steven Spielberg, getting to talk to Steven Spielberg about his vision would have been one thing.
Yeah.
Meeting Steven Spielberg so he could approve of your video game design, again.
Oh, the story gets
red
better.
Flags. I know.
You're on the money. You're on the money.
It's just like, shut the heck up, Spielberg.
Spielberg's response to this pitch after coming. So one,
I hate this.
No one can design.
This is the worst part of the story.
I know. Yeah, it is. No one can design a good game in 3 days. No one. It's zero. You need to try a first cut. You got to iterate. You need to wipe it out, start over, and like think about it, mull it over. Right. So here it is. 3 days after he pitches it to Spielberg. Spielberg's response is, "Can you just make it like Pac-Man, where he eats Reese's Pieces instead of dots?" And of course, Howard Warshaw, who had basically stayed up 72 hours straight coming up with his design, was like,
never meet your heroes, Warsaw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course, I'm just reiterating the accounts that I've seen and read about. So I think that has happened.
We obviously benefit from the luxury now of looking back and being like, this Warsaw was on the cusp of an entirely new entertainment medium. But at the time, it is fair to say that, like, video games weren't very much more than just like those toys you'd get in a cereal box that, you know, so that's what he wanted. And
that's a great point.
He wanted tie-in. He wanted some merchandise tie-in to his movie, and that's all he wanted. That's all he saw this as being.
Yeah.
He didn't see this as being like, oh yeah, you know, like, had this been done right, which would have been, by the way, my DLC idea. We talked about how we would have done E.T., like how could E.T. have been done right both at the time and now. Literally, it could have been. I mean, this set the tone for like video game movie tie-ins for like becoming the reputation of shameless cash grabs. But they could have, you know, if you go back in time and beat Spielberg over the head with a truth stick, then, you know, this could have been like an actual good partnership.
Oh, it wasn't Spielberg's fault. This
It
this
is a little
whole
bit
like
Spielberg's fault.
he only had to sign Warner to do this. Like
Huh?
Warner Brothers, like the company
Yeah.
that went to
No,
go
I know.
negotiate the rights. Like part of the rights they negotiated for was Spielberg's input, but really it was Warner Brothers.
Oh, I
Or
know.
Warner, yeah.
I am aware that it's a monster much bigger than Spielberg alone,
Yeah.
but still, it's his movie. It was his desire for
What he should have
merchandise
done is said
tie-in.
no, just no. We're not making
Yeah,
this game.
yeah.
Can it? No deal. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
That's what he should have done. And
Absolutely,
then
yep.
we could have done it correctly. Where was I going with that? You said great. I said great point because you were talking about toys. The other aspect of Atari's profits nosediving at this point was because there were retailers flooded with extra product that weren't being sold, and Atari's reputation in general outside of ET prior to even ET's release was already starting to go down the pits. And retailers like Kmart's, Walmart's, etc., whatever, I don't know if Walmart even existed back then, we're all like
certainly did.
competing for shelf space, and like toys were part of video games. And so that's anyway, so that was another aspect of Atari's context in this moment. So that is the story behind ET. Of course, it came out and it was bad. So again, retailers ordered a ton of stock and then returned so much of it back to Atari. They didn't want it anymore. It left Atari kind of high and dry with all this extra like cartridges across the board. It was a lot of ET, but also a lot of other ones. It had cost, I think it was something like $20 million for the license, and they expected to sell 5 million copies at $20 a piece, and they would have made it all back plus more, but none of that happened. It was all a disaster, and I don't quote me on the exact millions of dollars because I don't think I have that correct with what's in front of me. And then of course after the game had come out,
they wouldn't want to disclose that, right? Like that's
it's out there. The information's it's my research that's lacking. Yeah. But yeah, all the money's out there. So yeah, it flopped, of course. A lot of angry kids. The game at the time that was much better was Pitfall. If you've never heard of that, that is one of Atari's like quote best games. It was kind of foundational in platformers. Pitfall, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it flopped. So yeah, that's the story behind ET. There was the debacle in the desert. The desert.
That's what I was going to say. You missed the next best part, which is the let me tell it. So they had so many, or they sold so few copies, and they had so many returns from angry parents and other purchasers, but the parents being the primary purchasers of an ET video game for their kids. Especially at the time back in 1982 and I guess it would have been 80. Was it 4 when it came out?
83 was the holiday. 83? Well, it was 82 holiday season into 83 was when the game came out.
Yeah. Yep. Anyways, yeah. So they had just a massive amount of stock, and they had nothing to do with it. So I can't even say as legend says, because this is actually documented as happening. They took it and they buried it somewhere in the desert
in New Mexico.
Do we know where? Is it like has it ever been disclosed where like you can go to that spot?
I believe so. If you do the research, I mean, it's publicly known now, but it was a little spot in New Mexico, Alamogordo, New Mexico landfill. And April 26, 2014 was when they were actually uncovered, the real ones. And nice. IGN's Naomi Kyle and Fran Marabella III were on site, and so were a few other reporters. There's a documentary about it. So it's all public knowledge now. So you can totally dig into it and find exactly where it is and go there yourself.
See, I was gonna say that should be the plot of the next Indiana Jones movie.
That'd be great. That'd
digging
be awesome.
up the lost ET cartridge.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, that's
about that all that Harrison Ford at his age could probably handle is
go dig up some video games and sand.
I throw shade, but I do believe that like 80-year-old man could just beat the absolute butt out of me any day of the week. Yeah.
He's with dysentery, he could do that.
Exactly.
Like he has dysentery and could still beat you up
but that's
at the
like
age of 80.
Yeah. That is also a circumstance where you probably would regret meeting your hero. So yeah, that's it. That's the story. That's the story. The landfill being kind of the peak there. Warsaw, of course, gets flack for making the worst game of all time. But in this IGN article you had me read, he takes it in stride. He says the vast majority of people who try to poke fun of me for making the worst game of all time have never played it, so they don't know what they're talking about. And he's also the guy who made Yard's Revenge. So like, how can you like his legacy is at the very least, as he says, his legacy deserves to be credited with the greatest range.
Yeah, because he has like the absolute best and the worst. What's
awesome, I don't know, man, that's great. I mean, there are some great designers who have made some butt games since then. So it's so actually, that leads us to our last question. So put a button on that. In the meantime, let's talk then about so what it is about. Like, let's describe this game. Let's talk about what is the game, right? Because it's not Pac-Man. That's what you're imagining. It is he was more or less able to keep his vision, and so let's talk then about what ended up being the final product of this game. That was, and again, when we say designed, we just mean outlined, right? Like not programmed in 3 days or whatever, 5 days.
Oh, it was just designed in 3 days. It was programmed in 5 weeks.
3 days.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's still quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this game that had a from inception to final product stage of like less time than it incubated less time than pretty much any human is capable of doing. So let's
so the premise of the game is to play as E.T. and you want to phone home, like the plot of the movie, and so you will explore this neighborhood and you'll find phone parts and you'll assemble the phone and you'll phone home and you'll fly off, and that's kind of the main goal of the game. And the rest of the stuff is more of like, what are your obstacles? What are things getting in your way? So there's pits everywhere that you fall into, and the phone parts are in random generated, like I guess it's random where it's at. And there's FBI agents and other adults that are in your way or can stop you. And Reese's Pieces are included in the game, and they actually restore your health. And so you kind of so top down.
He did the thing. He did the thing that Spielberg wanted, anyways, right? Like it's not the whole game, but it's still in there. As far as I'm concerned, I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's the game. And like it was like a 5. If you take a cube, like a 3D space cube, but you flatten it out, and then you can explore that, and then the edges roll over on each other. It was kind of like exploring a cube, and so that top down view, different landscapes, I guess. And apparently it had a really good title theme and an amazing ending. Like the animations and like the sound and stuff were really good for the Atari at the time.
Nice. Yeah.
The actual gameplay, of course, was not. But that was the design. That's what the game is. If you see videos and screenshots online, that's what's happening.
I love this description here. Yeah, I love the description here because all it takes is just a little bit of tweaking, and what you have is a description of Dark Souls here.
Nice. Yeah.
Let's just say, so the description you have here is abysmal gameplay, which features a critical lack of explanation of where to go, unfun mechanics like pitfalls that constantly interrupt any sort of flow, and graphics that weren't strong even during its time. Just tweak the wording here a bit, and you've got an IGN description of Dark Souls, right? You say bleak and dreary game world, which features no hand-holding in explaining where to go. The mechanics constantly stymie you and create obstacles that create a different sense of flow, and though the graphics aren't great, it doesn't need to have great graphics to still be a gem, right? Like I literally just described Dark Souls.
Yep.
So that's kind of fascinating.
So Dark Souls is the worst game ever made. Thank you. I'm glad you said that.
Specifically, I think that there are a lot of bugs is one of the things lacking in this description here. Is like there were I think I read that there was like a particular bug where once you actually got the phone pieces, something happened with the game world, and you would literally like fall into the floor and like couldn't, like you'd have to reset back to whatever the last checkpoint was or whatever. It's like, it'd be like, right. It would be like completing a dungeon in Zelda, and then like because you got whatever like MacGuffin token that you needed to get, you fall through the world, right?
You're like, oh.
But like the guy who's buff weeks and pretty much by himself. Like, I mean, this is not Zelda QA testing here either, so you gotta give.
Speaking of testing, the Warner Brothers or whatever just opted to skip player testing. They have player testing phases in back then. They did, and they skipped that for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course they did. Of course they did.
They didn't have time. They didn't have time for that.
Yeah, no, it's like you know, when you look at the whole like story, it's like you can't. Like, of course, this is the worst game of all time because it was created under completely absurd and ridiculous circumstances due to pressures that should not have been put on it. It was a precursor to what we'll talk about eventually. Well, cool. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the reasons why it's considered the worst game of all time. Without either, well, I can't speak for you, but I've never played it, and
I've dabbled. Yeah.
I think that of the vast majority of our listeners, without ever played it, like, let's discuss whether you think it actually deserves to be considered the worst game of all time, and how, all things being relatively equal, right? Like, if it were made with modern accoutrements and like, let's just say it's still a truncated timetable, but maybe not like as absurd as, it would
5
literally
weeks.
not be possible in 5 weeks, today. So yeah, so like with all that in mind, like would it by today's standards, would it still be the worst, right?
Right.
Considering again, also what the dearth of garbage that's out there now, right? Like,
Yeah, there's so much.
Like, I'll start and just say that I don't think, just based on what I've heard and described, right? Like, I think it got the reputation for being the worst game. I think it coincided, like you said, with the crash. It was not responsible for the crash. It just was coincidentally happened around the same time.
Yep.
And though, yeah, it certainly hurt Atari, it's clear that Atari was making bad enough decisions in the lead up to it that, like, sure, it might have been the nail in the coffin, but it didn't kill Atari. So I just think it got a reputation, and it may not be a great game. I'm not sitting here trying to say that I would like, I'm going to play it and be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to be that kind of hipster, right? But like, yeah, it's like the worst game of all time. I feel like in order to be considered the worst game of all time, like you have to factor in the fact that the industry has gotten markedly worse in the way it treats its consumers and its employees, right? Like as bad as that was, as bad as the way Atari and Warner Brothers treated Warsaw, like, oh man, like it's awful what the industry is putting out these days, and I just can't. I have a hard time perceiving of this as being something. And like I said, if it were made today, like under the same relatively similar circumstances, like a small team given an almost impossible deadline, but with all of the modern tools to make it, like, yeah, it'd probably suck. But the worst, I doubt it.
Yeah, I'm with you. You take any developer from back then and do the exact same situation. This is almost like that. There's a competition for coders out there, like Code Jam, I think is what it's called, where like you're given some crazy crazy strict deadline to a very difficult problem, and you have to write code to solve it. It's very like that actually could do that. That would be super fun and kind of cool. Like do this over Twitch, do it like a Games Done Quick charity fundraiser, and like give developers like extraordinarily limited technology and like 3 hours to develop something and see what they can come up with. This, if you put ET in that context, here's a developer who's really, really smart, who's extremely creative, who made Yar's Revenge, and you give that one person 5 weeks to come up with this, like it's not so bad. When you look at that context, when you put it all together and you play ET, is it buggy? Yes. Is it infuriatingly abysmal to play and extraordinarily obtuse in what you're supposed to do? Yes.
Yeah, so is Cyberpunk, and they made that for like 8 years making that game with a huge team and tons of money, right? Like, so context is a big thing here. If you literally just isolate the game to its most basic components, even then it's still not that much more buggy than any of the crap that gets released today, right? And I mean, there are some really interesting things too, like this, like the IGN article cites that, like for what it's worth, again, taking in the full context, did he execute these concepts well? No, but he was playing with concepts that at the time were brand new. It was a non-linear open exploration kind of, like you could it had linear aspects to it, but like you could try to collect the phone pieces in any order you want, and and that was, again, and very, very much, like a precursor in many ways to Metroid and Castlevania and that entire genre. I'm not gonna say that they necessarily fall in the same category as ET, but like there are elements that were present in that game design.
Zelda 1 as well.
That would later be lauded and praised, and how different really is Zelda 1 from ET when you just strip away everything and just leave it to its base element, like gameplay elements. Like, there's at least comparisons there that are notable. So it was, I'm not going to go as far as saying as it was ahead of its time, because in order to be ahead of your time, you still have to execute on the ideas well. It's like you have to execute on the ideas well and have the ideas ahead of their time, and they're just underappreciated at the time. This is like, they also were done poorly. So, but hey, 5 days. Like, I don't blame the guy. 5 weeks. Yeah, sorry. It was 5 days to come up with the plan, though, right? 3 days to come up with the plan.
3 days to come up with a design. No code
Exactly.
yet.
And that's what I mean.
5
It's
weeks to code
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
once you start coding, you're coding, right?
Right.
Like and you have 5 weeks. Yeah, no, that's all you're doing is you're coding.
Yep.
So the 3 days to come up with the entire structure of the game, like, yeah, they're freaking BioWare couldn't even like nail what Anthem was for
Right.
like 2 years. So
With a huge
like,
budget and a massive team of people.
yeah, had he had a huge budget, a massive team of people, he would have made the greatest video game movie tie-in of all time, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's.
I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent. I just want to talk about Howard Scott Warshaw as the individual,
the person.
Absolutely. So again, smart, very talented, creative software engineer. He is quoted saying, "I actually just bought his book because I want to read more about him."
Oh, yeah, nice.
He came out with a book back in 2020.
I love the name of it too. So good.
Yeah, Once Upon Atari. Yeah, is the name
Once
of the book.
Upon Atari, How I Killed an Industry or something like that. It's so great.
It's great.
Yeah, How I Made History by Killing an Industry. It's so tongue-in-cheek. I love it. He owns it. He owns it so well.
He does own this, but he left the gaming industry because it wasn't as fulfilling for him. And what's crazy, and he contrasts in one of the interviews I was reading in my research, was he and everyone, his peers, his contemporaries at the time, none of those individuals ever experienced video games as children and had the dream of becoming a maker of them. In fact, we're like now the first generation. The millennials are the first generation to like grow up playing games, who then have the dream of like, oh, I want to make game and have like draw inspiration from foundational experiences in your youth with certain games and like and they had none of that. None of it. They're just programming like you said, software for computers that are competing on a level with toys. Like and so it's interesting because people are like, well, why did he leave the gaming industry? He's so smart and creative. Like he could have done that. It was just unfulfilling. And so he like moved on. Now he's like into psychology and has like a psychology degree, I think, and does a whole bunch. I can't wait to read more about him and see like, that's so fascinating for him as an individual, but it's never too late. It's never too late. We could have a new ET game. We could bring him in as a consult. It would be awesome. That would be so cool. I would love that full circle.
I want him to make something he wants to make, right? Like I want him
that's
to
what
make
I said. Bring him in as a console. Like give the ET license to a modern development team, like Insomniac or something like crazy.
ET is firmly in that like
it
class.
Is. We're too
classic
it's too old.
That it's too. It's like it'd be like, let's make a Citizen Kane or a Casablanca movie. It's like what?
Like
what? Or a video game. Sorry. What? No. It's ridiculous. It's absurd.
I agree. But
unless Citizen Kane was like he took his Rosebud sled and was like, sorry, spoilers, Rosebud sled, and he's like shooting, like gunning down mobsters or whatever.
I have no idea what you're saying. I've never seen that movie.
You have no idea. You've never seen Citizen Kane?
No.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. In fact, I thought he was a rapper, but okay, never mind.
Oh my gosh. No, Citizen Kane, unlike Citizen Kane, is widely considered the greatest piece of cinema of all time. But
interesting.
It's absurd. It's an absurd. It just like, call me, maybe I'm just too much of a young buck, but it's an old person's greatest film of all time, and it benefited solely from being the fact that it was one of the first really truly like artistically sound films, black and white and everything. It's a movie. Sorry, I think Citizen Kane sucks. So there you go. That's Penguin's hot take.
Really?
And
all right.
I want Rosebud's the big spoiler. The Rosebud. What's Rosebud is the entire like question of the movie, and I'm gonna spoil it for everyone. It's a sled. So Rosebud the sled, Citizen Kane,
like a
shooting
sled
machine guns.
You would ride in the snow.
Yeah, I think so. Or like a horse-drawn sled or something like that.
Huh.
Like some it's
neat.
It's
okay.
But that's the game pitch that I have is but then you take it after Citizen Kane's events. And now he's riding on Rosebud, gunning down mobsters and terrorists.
Great.
Okay. Well, what is the last question? The last question is going to be did the video game industry learn anything from this incident? Is there anything that they learned? Because like I just went on a rant, I think earlier, realizing that I was like, actually, I don't think they learned anything from this. I feel like the only lesson they learned is, maybe we shouldn't have people make video games in 5 weeks. So we'll have them make it in. We'll just have them make it over the course of like 100-hour work weeks instead. Like that is better. That is better, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to make it in 5 weeks, but you have to do the bulk of the work in 5 weeks while working 100-hour days. Like it's all good. There's not even 100 hours in a day. Crunch culture. Take that,
Yep.
crunch culture. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
exactly what this is. This is definitely crunch culture. I think
Mhm.
the video game industry, though, the lesson they learned at the time was more a result of the gaming crash the next year
Right.
when
Yeah.
Nintendo had come into the scene and, of course, had their perfect polish like experiences with their Nintendo Seal of Quality because they
Yep.
had to start from scratch to even gain retailer trust as far
Yeah.
as stocking video games in stores, not to mention the consumer trust. And
It's
so,
not starting from scratch. That's starting from zero. That's starting from -10, right?
yeah,
Like that's like, you're not starting from scratch. Is starting from zero. It's
that's
what
true.
is
You
this
got it.
thing?
Yeah.
What
Right.
is this thing you want me to stock? Oh, it sounds like it's going to be a risk, as opposed to, oh, we know that's a risk because we've seen it play out. So
Right.
Nintendo was
Yeah.
fighting like an uphill battle from down like
Yep.
a hole, right?
Underground,
a
yeah.
hole that was dug, and they were trying to get out of the hole and up the hill. Yeah.
Yeah, and they did it. And so there was a push. They did, yeah. There was a push for like video game quality assurance and testing and like having better polished experiences. More like not just quantity, but quality was now emphasized. And so I think
Yeah.
through the 80s and like that's a whole different story, and we can talk ad nauseum about how that played out. But you're exactly right. You nailed it. Crunch culture, has that really changed? No. How about publishers and people who aren't involved in video games making big decisions about video games? That hasn't changed. That's still happening. We got better. Things are much better in that regard. But
Shameless and cheap cash grab tie-ins to other properties that
yeah, we
basically
don't really
are
have those
designed to trick.
anymore. Like
We don't have as many. We have I think there are still a few. There's always so bad they never really like reached the light of day, so to speak.
yeah,
But you're right, they're much fewer. And then there are also exceptions to that too, where there's the few and far between, diamonds in the rough, like GoldenEye and some of the Spider-Man movie tie-ins are actually
some of the Disney
exceptionally
ones
good
too.
Spider-Man games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Did you hear, by the way? I think I heard this. Okay, I don't know if this is rumor or not, but I had heard that Disney announced they're doing a Disney Plus show of Kingdom Hearts.
Oh no, I have no idea. Are you serious? That's amazing.
Look it up. You can look it up after this. Again, rumor. I literally heard it from someone, and I decided to pair it here, probably recklessly, but I figure it just came up. So you're literally googling it right now.
I'm literally googling it right now. Yes.
Yeah. So that is that's that. Yeah. I don't think they learned much though.
The internet says it's a rumor, so that's it.
Rumor. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, internet, for
Including IGN.
body checking me.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Like, what lessons should the video game industry have learned from this?
We are learning.
We covered a lot. We covered
Yeah.
a lot of it, right? Like, we covered a lot of the, like, they should have learned that, like, give creators space to make things great, right? Like, give them space and allow them to make what they want to make. Yeah, I mean, poor guy's reputation was ruined. And what alternate universe is out there where he said no to this entire project and made something great instead?
Yeah, right. That could have happened. Interestingly enough, the parallel you just drew to Cyberpunk is changing the culture now, and the pandemic is actually changing the aspect of crunch and giving creatives space, giving studios time to create good experiences, polish things up.
Right.
Delays ad nauseum that we've been experiencing over the last 2 years are now the norm. No one's mad. No one's losing money, I don't think. I mean, no one's like, because that's what dictates everything, is still the money backbone of the entire indry, because everyone's a business, everyone needs to make money. And that's what dictates the timelines, the shareholder pleasing, et cetera, et cetera. And so, so Cyberpunk set a new precedent. Like, don't put out a game that's extremely high budget, expected to be amazing, and it's not. ET did the exact same thing.
I think it bothers me that they should have learned that lesson.
I know, that's what, right? And so this happened back in the 80s, and we've completely rehashed the entire video game industry since, and it's happening again. We now have crunch culture as a problem. We now have publishers keep pushing difficult timelines on their developers, and like those lessons haven't been learned, but they are getting better. I think unionization is happening. It's active. It's out there. There's lots of talks and discussions about it, and delays are happening. Games aren't being released as in buggy states as they are anymore. So change is there. It's just slow. And we don't have as many bad movie tie-ins anymore. So there you go. But that wasn't because of ET.
The lesson should have been
bad movie tie-ins were all through the PS2 and PS3 era.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I was gonna say that lesson should have been like, take the same properties and make great games, like Spider-Man, like Insomniac Spider-Man. Like, they weren't trying to copy Tom Holland's Spider-Man. They were just trying to make an excellent Spider-Man game as well. So like, they could have taken,
and that's kind of what Marvel did as their strategy was to look out in the landscape of who makes good games and then outsource the IP to good developers. And we got Guardians of the Galaxy, published by Square Enix was awesome. Spider-Man by Insomniac was amazing, etc., etc. They're getting smart.
Yeah, like I just like as much as I love Lord of the Rings and as much as I love Shadow of Mordor as a game.
Yeah.
That game in particular, like I almost think it would have been better had it been made and then made to also just have its own take on Mordor, its own take on those characters and that imagery, right?
Oh, and like not
I
fit the
almost feel
canon.
like not fit the right, like that Hobbit game that came out like around the same time the
You
Lord of the
played
Rings
that?
movies did. I didn't ever play it. No, I don't
I
think it
didn't
was very good. But the image, like it looked good. I think and
Yeah.
what I mean is that like visually it looked like its own game, and that was
Yeah.
interesting to me. And I always thought that like Lord of the Rings would have been better. Lord of the Rings in a video game space would have been better suited if they had just not tried to copy Peter Jackson at every turn. But the Two Towers and Return of the King tie-in games were actually really good.
Yeah.
Fantastic games.
I never played them, but I've heard good things.
They're good. They're addictively good. Hard. They're tough games. At least I remember them being tough as like a middle schooler. So, but good stuff. All right. Well, that is where we'll stop. As always, talking about Lord of the Rings, I guess. And wait, no, we haven't mentioned Breath of the Wild this episode. So let's do Tears of the Kingdom. It's Tears of the Kingdom now.
It is.
So, okay, cool. Now we did it. So we want to hear from you, listeners, what you think of Tears of the Kingdom. What do you think of E.T., the Atari game? Have you played it? If you have played it and want to disabuse us of the notion that it wasn't that bad by telling us it was bad because of your experience with it, then please disabuse us of our foolish millennial notions for not having played Gen X's games. And otherwise, what do you think of it? What do you think of this notion of the worst video game of all time? Is it possible that any game from the 80s, when facing the deluge and onslaught of the last 20 years of game development, could never be considered the worst game of all time in light of all that? Please tell us all those thoughts and more. Termite, where can they share their thoughts if they have them?
Normally, I would have like a funny little clip here, but I want to just like take a second to cite my sources because I had linked.
Oh, yeah.
And I would probably fail to link this off in show notes because of constraints on how much text I can put in the notes. But the backbone of our conversation was IGN. Rebecca Valentine famously wrote for GamesIndustry.biz, moved to IGN. She wrote an article about a month ago, August 20th, that had the full breakdown of everything that we've talked about tonight. Also, the show High Score on Netflix, the first episode has an account and an interview with Howard Scott Warshaw. And there was the quote about the abysmal gameplay that you read that you compared to Dark Souls that we loved so much. That was also written 2 years ago by Cody Gravel over at screenrant.com. So go check those articles out if you would like. We also use like Wikipedia and some other things too. But yeah, you can tell us why E.T. should be remade from the ground up on PlayStation 5 over at 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website with links to all of our social media outlets where you can tell us all about your cravings for a new ET game. We have a Discord server stood up. We have Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter. We have it all there. You can start a conversation anywhere you would like. And we are going to have another episode for you next Monday at midnight when it drops over on our audio feeds, audio services, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and everywhere else via RSS feeds. So next week, what are we going to talk about?
It should be a gritty first-person shooter where you play as one of the FBI agents who's like an alien hunter, Area 51 guy.
Okay.
And so, but then he comes into this like quiet suburban town, and this alien keeps turning his gun into a radio. You familiar with that controversy with E.T.?
No.
Like the original cut of the movie, the FBI agents are like holding guns in a scene, but then like Spielberg came later and replaced them with walkie-talkies. And people were like,
no, I
replace the
didn't know
guns
that.
with walkie-talkies.
Huh.
They made fun of it hilariously in South Park, where they did an episode on like Spielberg and Lucas coming in and like re-editing their films later.
Yeah.
But they had like they had people with machine guns, but they were walkie-talkies.
I wonder if I've seen that episode and didn't get the reference.
Man.
That's probably what happened.
So funny.
That happens a lot to me. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, next week, what are we talking about? We are talking about, if you have it up, you can say it.
I don't have
You
it
don't
up.
have it up.
I'm
Okay,
looking
great.
up the cost of the Lord of the Rings GameCube games that you just mentioned.
Oh, nice. I
To
think I
see how
have
much
one.
they are. Huh?
Oh, next week we're talking about cultural appropriation in video games. So it'll be a
Ooh.
nice another one that will probably be filled with long rants. But spoiler alert, it'll probably boil down to just like be kind to one another.
Yeah, right.
I've decided that in one of my D&D campaigns, I plan on renaming one of my weapons as kindness, so that way I can say that I'm
Ooh.
killing them with kindness.
Oh, you would do that. That is a very penguin thing. Yes. Yes, it is.
Ooh, look, I got sunburned the other day mowing the lawn right here.
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, you can see a
Receding
little bit.
spot on my hairline. All right, well, with that, then we'll see you next week.
See you next week.